Welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to help trauma therapists be their incredible selves, to be human, to be real, not just a clinician. I'm a big believer in who we are is more important than what we know. And this requires cultivating authenticity, genuineness, and vulnerability, and that requires intention. You can learn more about my courses and workshops by going to thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. Let's get started. All right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. I'm very excited to have back Doreen Hills. Doreen, welcome back.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
I'm happy to be back.
Awesome. So Doreen is the founder, director at the Center for Healing Trauma and Attachment. Their mission is to provide cutting-edge treatment approaches in healing traumatic distress, and they're committed to finding ways to provide quality and affordable therapy and to be the pioneer in healing trauma in the Northeast region. Doreen has been a mental health provider for over 20 years and has worked in various mental health settings in New York, the Philippines, and Colorado. Her background includes intense and immersed experiences working with poverty-stricken fishermen in the Philippines, orphans that were severely neglected and abandoned, as well as Muslims in Manila. These experiences gave her immense insight to trauma, resiliency, and healing. Doreen, welcome back. So, you were recently on the podcast. The thing that just struck me about you is you are so inspiring. I mean, not only are you a clinician and you've been doing this, you've drawn from your own experiences living in a particular environment, and then you come to the States and you create and found your own clinic. Super inspiring, I think, for a lot of clinicians. What are we going to talk about today? Because I know you said you had something specific you wanted to share, and I'm really kind of looking forward to talking about that.
Yes. So, when you said something about clinic, never in my, it was a dream, and never I thought I would, develop a nonprofit. Found a nonprofit organization, and especially focusing on, the treatment of complex trauma. And it's so interesting now that I'm wearing not only the clinician hat, but I'm also wearing the founder and executive director hat. Things have, it's not only shifted, but improved me as a human being. And since we are working in delivering service to people that are really impacted by complex trauma, I've learned something different about leadership. And it has something to do with how, as a provider with people that works under me, and many variety of people like the healing arts providers and office manager, and also clinical workers, and even the board of directors. What can we do to make sure that we not only take care of the people we serve, but also we take care of the people working with us? Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking, reading and thinking about, I look at different kinds of leadership styles, and something I've never really, never thought I will look into, because you're a clinician, you're working with, a lot of it, groundwork of clinical work that I've run into. How can we implement, I thought about this, how can we implement a trauma-informed leadership? And let me see here. There you go.
Nice.
There. And so I think I looked into that deeper, now in more in the leadership lens, and it makes sense because we know, I think most of the folks that listen here, we know the 4 pillars of trauma-informed care practices. And this is with the clients. First is realizing that, trauma can happen to all of us, recognizing this warning signs and triggers, and how do we respond to be better healers and helpful to people, and then resisting re-traumatization. Those are the 4 pillars of trauma-informed care. And when you apply that, and when I apply that in my leadership with the people that I work with, understanding where they're coming from in a lens of kindness and compassion. So they're doing the best they can. They're working hard to follow the mission of serving others. And as an organization and as a leader, I need to, in my heart and in my mind, I need to acknowledge that by, responding. How do I respond? How do I support them? And that is by giving them opportunity to, to show themselves, to show their gifts and their talents, not just their weaknesses, or not just their, not just the needs improvement. I look at that, responding to them, to the people that work here, like, what are the gifts that they have? What do they have now that we wanted to promote in the organization? And by doing that, we provide different types of wonderful trainings for them. Not only trainings, but also professional development and also leadership.
What? Okay, so let me just pause here for a second. So the first thing that comes to my mind is, wow. I mean, you started by saying you never even imagine yourself in a leadership role. How do you define leadership, being a leader? What does that mean to you? What does that come to mean to you?
You know what? It reminds me, I'm using the analogy of a parent, of a safe and secure parent to a child. That's what a leader is. When you know that you're not perfect. I am an imperfect leader, but I know when to seek help. I know that when I am, when I'm getting burned out, and when I'm just pulling my hair, that I know I can ask for help and I'm not afraid of it. And my sense, again, as like in the parent analogy, we ask for help and we learn from others. I always believe that I evolve as a leader, and I improve myself when I am willing to hear and listen to what my mentors are telling me. And we're talking about, and I tell them, give it to me. It doesn't matter how it might sting. It might sting, the feedback, but I know that deep within your heart, your intention is to help me, to improve me, to develop me. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned over the years as a leader at CARA is to provide safety and security to the people I work with. I don't think nobody grows when there's a lack of support and if they feel unsafe working here. I wish that you're here, you're here with me, and you can ask the people that I work with how much they love coming here every day. They're so inspired to just help people, because when I am providing that safe and security for them, they don't have to worry about being afraid. They can do their work. Does that make sense? They don't have to be worried about, okay, what would Doreen say if I say this? Or what is, is she going to be rejecting me? It's not existent here.
Right. So when you first started, when you founded this organization, the goal, I'm sure, was to create this incredible organization where you were providing care for clients.
Yes.
And so was providing or developing as a trauma-informed leader, was that like something you didn't really think about to this extent? When did this come about for you?
It did not in the beginning. It's just all about, working with clients.
Sure.
But then it's a ripple effect, right? Okay, well, we wanted to develop, we wanted to provide safety, security, and all those good trauma-informed practices to the clients. But in the middle of that are, clients and leadership. But in between there are the providers. And I think what's the beauty of this, and I think I feel good about this. The beauty of it is I am not only on the top where I'm just directing people of what to do, but I'm also a provider. So I know what's going on. I'm still connected to the people we serve, to the clients.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you hear leadership, like let's say there's an executive director and they're just focused on the numbers, the units, how much it's the numbers. But I think I am in a unique role to where, okay, I'm doing the executive leadership, but I'm also a clinician. So I know when staff tells me they're burned out, or let's say they are having a difficult time with cases, I get them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It's a completely different perspective. I mean, there's such an air, or a lens. I guess a lens is a good analogy. The lens you're looking through is has such self-awareness about it. It's like,
Yes.
okay, we're treating clients, but what about the people, the people who are working with you, under you, in a sense, for you?
Mm-hmm. And sadly, we see so many, organizations that I think we tend to downplay the role of the providers. Doesn't matter if you're a clinician or you're doing other stuff, or the office. I think we have to remember that without them, and without them feeling safe and secure, they're not going to be able to provide quality work for the people we serve. So it is important to pay attention to, as a leader, to be mindful of how you take care of the people, working with you.
So the idea of a leader, the definition of leader, how has that changed for you? How has that evolved for you? Like when you started, well, I'm going to lead this organization, to now, how would you define being a leader? What does that mean?
I think it's been ingrained. Sometimes there's no words for it, but I think it's ingrained in me back when I was, again, the roots, right? When I came to the Philippines, it's, I've always tell myself when I was younger that I will always treat people with kindness and respect. Doesn't matter how old they are, what kind of position they're in. And I've carried that. I think even if I am not running a trauma clinic, if let's say I'm running something different, I will continue to provide safety and security to people by respecting their dignity. And it's always been with me. And my definition of leadership, it may be simple, but providing safety and security for others, showing kindness and compassion to them and giving it back to you as well. It's not only a one-way street. You give it to your people, the ones that you work with, and you get it, it's back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you tell them, to take care of yourself, not just pizza and, not just pizza boxes and Pepsi, right? When somebody tells you I'm burned out, okay, well, we're going to have a party. We're going to have a couple of pizzas and then everything's fine. You're not burned out anymore.
Right.
That doesn't work that way. When you say safety, self-care, what can I do as your leader to help you achieve that self-care? But you also give that to you as well. So what does that look like on my end? I have wonderful mentors that I reach out to when I'm at lost or when I don't know what I'm doing. And I also practice self-care. So I think it's a two-way street. Leadership for me is two-way street. You give safety and security to the people that you work with, but you also give that safety and security for yourself.
I think your definition and what you're speaking of here sounds pretty evolved to me. Oftentimes I think that when, we hear of leadership, how do you define leader? Well, it means setting an example and showing people what to do, and like really kind of pushing, right? Almost forcing, telling people what to do. But you're not even talking about that. You're talking about something that is just feels so human. It feels so elemental. It feels, what's the word here? Love. I mean, there's a lot of love here, what you're talking about.
I love my people, and I do. I don't, and it's weird, right? Probably people say this is really to some folks, but I tell my staff I love them. I do, and I show it to them, and I think that is, probably it's so unfamiliar to others, but I think as a leader, when you open your heart to that it becomes normal. It becomes easier when you say, I do care about you. And by the way, even at the very beginning, when somebody comes, I wanted to share this with you. When they come on their first day of work, I ask them, how would I know that you are starting to feel stressed? What are your behavior? What are the signs that you can show me or you can tell me so I can better help you? And, that's like, for people, that is a weird question, but let's take a moment, right? Let's take a moment. Nobody ever asked me that. Right. And so they open up and I said, okay, so I know what to look for. And this is also what I want you to look for when I'm feeling burned out.
Right. What I like
about
let me answer that. I want to first do pause here for a second. We're speaking with Doreen Hills. She's the founder director at the Center for Healing Trauma and Attachment. We'll be right back. What I like about that, Doreen, is that, I mean, it's such a great question because not only does it shows someone that you're caring about them, but it also brings up the idea that, yeah, we're human. A lot of us get stressed. Most of us get stressed. We all get stressed. It's going to happen. Let's nip this in the bud. Let's bring this and talk about this right now so we don't have to deal with this giant snowball of stress, 3 months down the road. You're already bringing into the discussion the health, the mental health of the people you're working with.
Yes, that's exactly, nipping it in the bud. And first things first, let's figure out, again, in the analogy of a parent and a child, a secure attachment, that using that as a lens to where, okay, let's say I am your mom. What do you need from me? What can I do to help you? In that way, you don't have to erupt or you don't have to scream or you don't have to isolate yourself. You can tell me what, how I can support you. And so the moment people, that's the first thing I ask them. And I think that is a beautiful process because it also, it also instills honesty and truth. And knowing that, okay, you know what, if worse comes to worse, or if I screw up or if I mess up, Doreen is not going to condemn me or reject me.
Right.
Because it's what you said, we're all human.
Yeah. And that attitude is only going to seep out into the work you're doing with your clients, right? Of course it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What an incredible model to set, not just for the people you're working with, but your clients. I mean, this is something, do you talk to other like clinical directors about this? This is something I think you should package and promote. I mean, it's amazing, really.
So glad that you asked that. So I have been I did a training on civility and leadership in Northeast Colorado. And I actually have about three clinical meetings with directors and, just teaching them about, okay, if we don't use trauma-informed care, we may have, I use the word kindness and compassion and leadership. And I shared that with them. I shared them not the statistics, but what I've been learning as a director here at the trauma center. What can they do to implement this, in their organization? So I'm, slowly working on it. And I do have, here's one policy that I have for staff. I tell them gossiping is not allowed at the trauma center. We don't gossip. We empower one another. And if we do have something, like aching your heart or just something that bothers you, you talk to the person that, that is involved. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to gossip, because gossip, I do believe, is toxic, and it creates division, which clients can feel. Mm-hmm. Clients can feel. A complexly traumatized client can feel that something is off. And so there's, the moment I say that, like, okay, well, we're gonna work as a team. And if we have issues, we will definitely let people know. Not ahead of time, but let people know of what's going on. We have that in our, we do have a once a month group supervision. And I ask them, everyone, are there any issues right now that you have that you would like to share with me? We bring it all out. It's nothing secret, So it's all out there. It's open, it's honest, and they don't have to bring this baggage with them when they get home.
It sounds so incredible. It sounds really like the opposite of kind of the work environments that I experienced when I was doing my internship. And it was very much, the interns against the administrative staff and the clinical staff. There was not anything of what you're talking about here. It almost felt like we had to struggle to do self-care. It wasn't really built in. It was kind of it seemingly built in. They kind of talk. What is that? Where did I get? Did you see those balloons? Did you see that? Balloons. Where did that come from?
I don't know.
That's the weirdest thing.
They're cute now.
But this sounds like some people might say, well, yes, of course, but it's not yes, of course. This has to be intentional.
Yes. Right? Yes, it is.
Are there challenges to implementing this type of or modeling this type of leadership?
I think the challenge that I have is the risk of me burning out. I find myself, because there's a lot of care there, but the reality, it's, just the risk, but I've not run into that. The challenges of this, okay, there's one. People are having a hard time leaving the trauma center. We have crying, we have tears.
You mean like going to another job?
Yes, or they have to move on, they have to go out of state, or something like that, life-changing stuff. So the challenge is they get so attached to where they have a hard time leaving. That's the challenge. That's a challenge that we run into. I don't know if that's even a challenge. It is worth it, Guy. I think that's the reason why I pointed this topic to you, because I think it is important. As clinicians, we're not trained to be leaders. And, we're not trained to do that. We think that it's only for business admin type of work. But the reality is, we are already applying leadership, not, when we work with people that we serve and also our clients. And I think this has to be normalized. And I think it is important when we don't know what we're doing, that we are actually seeking for help And this is the big thing for me, for me to get out of that risk of burnout, I need to be honest and I need to be true and genuine to my mentors. Like, I am struggling right now. And you know what? I also utilize the role of the board.
Mm-hmm.
I will meet with them and I will tell them I'm struggling on such and such and such. Can you help me? So this is part of, again, them feeling like, they feel valued, that I'm asking for help. And I feel valued for their wisdom.
Is there any sense or trepidation or fear that you would have about being so vulnerable to other administrative staff or your board, or like for fear that, oh my God, Doreen is feeling burned out. Can she do this job? There's none of that for you?
Yeah. You know why? Because I think, again, it goes back to humanity. How about you? I mean, I can bring that, if somebody bring that up to me. How about you? Do you ever feel that moment of burnout? Because everybody does.
We all do.
We all do.
Yeah.
We all do. And so fear of maybe, sometimes maybe incompetence, or she cannot do this. And, I don't. I really don't. And I think my fear is not being open. My fear is isolating myself, which we all know when, trauma continues to, it's like a yeast. Trauma continues when you isolate yourself, when you withdraw. And so, I mean, yes, insecurity, of course. Who would not be insecure doing this kind of stuff? So help me or figure out how to, find resources. No, I don't feel that.
Yeah.
That fear,
I mean, I like what you said about, when a lot of therapists don't think of themselves as leaders, that's the, clinical director, or that's that person in that office over there. I'm just a clinician, or I'm a therapist. I'm not really a leader. But what you're saying is that's not entirely true. This is kind of really resonating with me, what you're talking about here.
To piggyback on that, I tell clinicians, the non-traditional providers, I tell them, you are not, you don't need to be cooped in this room. There are so many things that you can do beside, other than being stuck in these four corners. And what I mean by that is look into the other gifts that you have. When my staff and I do 6 months or 3 to 6 months evaluation, I ask them, okay, you're getting the hang of this. You're a good clinician. You're a good provider. What are your other gifts? And how can Kara promote that and empower that in you?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody might say, I'm good in outreach. Okay, girl, I tell them, just go ahead and, okay, what can we do to get you started on outreach? Do you need to have a little bit of professional development? I can help you on that. Do you want to do grant writing? Oh, well, I'm good in, the narrative, the story. Okay. Would you like to consider this? I tell people you're not cooped or you're not isolated in just doing clinical work, because when you isolate yourself, or when you just tell yourself you are just a clinician, you will get burned out from that. You've got to do other things too.
During your education and your development, was this modeled for you? Where does this come from?
I just thinking about that question now. When I was in the Philippines, and this was, my bachelor's degree in psych, we had this course called industrial psychology. It was really a very cool course that I wish we have this in the US. It really helped us dive into the human resource field. In fact, I was trained when I was taking that course. I was trained to be an interviewer. like an employment, interview. And actually my internship was, I used the lens of industrial psychology there. And so that's where I learned leadership.
Mm.
That's, when that was, bachelor's degree. But then when I came here to the US, there's nothing like that.
Mm.
So, I used that, I used that model. I used what I've learned when I was in the Philippines. But then I think this, I need to know more about it. And I actually enrolled in this leadership training with Michael Anderson, and it's getting into the really nitty gritty of leadership. And also I looked into Simon Sinek's leadership model. And I think that's pretty much it. I just know ingrained in my heart and soul that you treat people right and they will treat you right.
So as we
that's the foundation for me.
Yeah. I mean, that it goes back to that simplest of all sayings in a sense. So as we kind of wind down here, Doreen, people listening to this, a lot of therapists of course, of all types and kinds, what would you say to them in terms of if they're listening to you thinking, okay, how do I implement this? I'm a therapist. Maybe I'm in private practice. Maybe I'm working in a clinic. How can I utilize what Doreen's talking about? How can I implement what Doreen's talking about? What can I do? What would be a good first step for them?
To sum it up, I think going back to knowing who you are, what is your motto? What is your vision as a helper? Are you just going to, to coop yourself in one corner? Or your capacity, your gift, what your strengths are. So what do you need to do to soar it, to show it to people? Yourself, your genuine self, because you are more than you. I believe that you are more than a clinician. You are more than that. With me, I never expected or even, never realized that I will be running a nonprofit organization. But I challenged myself and I told myself, I know I can do something more than what I'm doing now. And again, in the framework of helping people. So knowing your vision, who are you? Why are you? Asking yourself that and hopefully, be able to find your journey besides just doing therapy work, because you are more than what you're telling yourself you are.
Great place to end here, Doreen. All right. So let's remind people where they can learn more about you and what you're doing at the Center for Healing Trauma and Attachment.
Yes, so they can connect with me, www.chtainc.org. And if people are interested to ask me questions or whatever, there's a feedback section there that they can, it will go straight directly to my email. So awesome. That would be a start.
Awesome. Doreen, so inspiring. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, you're doing it. I really appreciate you sharing your heart. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you so much, Guy. I appreciate you too.
All right. Take care.
All right.